Hello and welcome to another special interview episode of the 5 to 9 podcast. Today I'm joined by a band I've been following since 2017. I'll do flash the cup up there, played Dot to Dot back in the day. Became obsessed with one of their early singles, That Kind of Love. Their early EPs after that. Just been following their music ever since. Joy to have them on. Jamie and Carlos from Low Island. Guys, how are you doing?
Hey man, thanks so much for having us on. That's so cool. From 2017, That Kind of Love.
I remember it was May. It was this time.
That's a real deep. That's a real deep cut.
Yeah.
I do every year when Dot to Dot comes on. I basically go through the lineup just to see like what new music's coming out, and I think that was the only song you guys had at that point,
no, you had one of a small handful. Definitely,
there was only a couple of tracks.
Yeah, there was like about probably three songs out at that point or something.
Yeah, it was second EP.
Yeah.
But yeah, that song still a banger, however many years later now. So love that track.
We were rehearsing today and we were playing to like a load of old stuff.
Including one on that EP.
Actually, and yeah, it's amazing to kind of like just kind of dust off those. We were saying it's amazing to dust off those old tracks, and they kind of like they come back to you, and you don't really know how. Jamie was saying like he doesn't know where the songs are stored in his brain, but suddenly, like, you know, someone starts playing a bit of the track or the drum beat comes in, and you're like, oh yeah, this is how that song goes, and actually, it's still there in the fingers somewhere.
Yeah, the muscle memory.
Yeah, someone sings a lyric and then you know, oh no, I'm about to do this. And you're like, how do I know that? How do I remember that? After so long, like now I do this because they did that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's incredible. Yeah, it must be, like I say, muscle memory. It just kind of stays there.
It just
until it doesn't.
And then you have to rehearse.
And it's always you're on stage playing the show and then you're like, oh, lost the muscle on this. I don't know what I do next.
But also it can come back in rehearsal, but you can't rely on it on stage. So you could like bash through an old song and you're like, oh yeah, that sounds really good. And then you get to the performance and everyone just will forget it. That's the other cool thing about it. It's just like, yeah, you learn something and then it just sort of disappears again when you least expect it. But yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, obviously that was a bit of a throwback to your early days, but we're here to talk about your third album, Bird, which is coming out on the 29th of May. And I want to start with you, Spit It Out. You chose that as, you know, the lead single for the project. Fantastic song, just like this thunderous rock tune. Reminds me a bit of, you know, in Rainbow's era, Radiohead. Like Body Snatchers was what came to mind when I was listening to it. Tell us a little bit about that song, why you chose it as the intro for this new era of the band.
So the album itself is about kind of the struggle to find freedom and to find presence in the modern world and the kind of in this like increasingly automated world that we live in. And Spit It Out specifically was about this kind of feeling of claustrophobia that this automated world gives you. Like when you're on social media or when you're at a self-checkout in the supermarket, this feeling of being like boxed in by technology and a feeling very kind of stuck and claustrophobic and wanting to kind of break out of it. And so, yeah, that's what the song is about. And the explosiveness of it kind of was just really exciting for us. And it felt like an exciting first. We love the idea of coming back with something that was just like raucous, loud guitars, because also I don't think we'd recorded guitars in this way before, and we'll probably talk about like the recording process later, but like, yeah, just loud guitars, loud drums, shouty vocals. It felt like a good first statement for the album. And how did the song, the writing of the song?
Yeah, we were just discussing it before. It was funny because like it had an initial version of it, which actually like in the nuts and bolts of it, it's very similar to how it ended out. But it was just, I don't know if this will mean anything to you, but it was very yellow, just like the color of it. That might mean nothing to most people. He just felt very kind of bright and yellow and almost sort of happy. And music can be happy, but it was kind of happy in the wrong way. And certainly given what the song was trying to express. And I just remember we were all just, at different points, different people in the band struggling with it, even though we knew there was, as Carlos said, this like explosive, something really exciting there. And I remember Carlos just like took it away on his own, as he does so well, and just completely transformed it, but with like the most simple moves, and managed to give it this real kind of darkness. But it was really amazing how it made such a difference. But actually, it was very subtle and slight, the things that changed. It wasn't like a total kind of overhaul, which has happened in other songs on this album that we might get to. But yeah, so it was a really interesting journey of just, it's so different to the first version, even though not much changed.
It's interesting as well that you said Body Snatchers, because I a while ago, like I actually really studied that song and was like just trying to get into the composition of it. And it's amazing. It's so much more complicated than you think it is. Like there are so many sections, and the way the guitars relate to each other, and the way they weave in and out with one another. And I think when we started off this song, it was very much just like one riff, and as Jamie says, it felt quite bright. And I think part of the change that happened with it was just trying to kind of actually maintain the raucous energy, but take it on a bit more of a bit more of an involved journey than just one riff. Because it's so easy just to come up with a riff and then be like, oh, that's great. And then you just, in the room, it feels really good to just jam around and around and around the same riff. But actually what Radiohead do so well is that they have those kind of riff moments, but then they take them on this like incredible journey. And I think, so it's great that you mentioned that track. 'Cause actually I was really thinking about it when we were writing this one.
Cleo, I've always been thinking about it. Always for a long time.
You always think about body, so we never fly away from Body Snatchers. Because also it has so much emotion in it as well.
And I think that's what this song lacked at first for us, is that it had the riff, it had the rocking thing, it had the explosiveness. And I think it was the chorus, it was the Summer's Coming In chorus section of this song, which was really where this kind of darkness and this really like negative, compressed emotional space came. And then when you get to just spit it out and it goes into this kind of riff thing, and suddenly it's like the lid blows open and the sun comes out, and there's just more depth to the colors of it rather than just yellow.
It's a rainbow now.
Yeah. With some purples. Purple, yeah.
No, I love it. Like I say, fantastic track. I love the idea that it started out like rough and raw, and you kind of kept that element, but like built the intricacies as you went as well. That's fantastic. Let's talk about your new album, Bird, then. From what I understand, it's a project that came out of a whole host of big life events for you guys, marriage, fatherhood, relationship breakdowns, illness, grief. From what I recall, that was the case as well, I think, for your last album, Life in Miniature. I'm curious, was it a continuation of those events from the previous record? Or was it really kind of what's happened in the last few years that shaped this album?
So, yeah, I mean, it's true to say that like a lot happened to everyone in the band in different ways. Some really wonderful things and some really difficult things. But it's not necessarily the record is about those things, but just that they kind of were the backdrop whilst we were making this, because it took us quite a long time to make. It took us like 2 years to make this album, and it was really intense because at different moments and sometimes at the same time, people were going through a lot of huge life changes, as you said. Like one of us became a father for the first time, another one lost their father, another one of us. I got really ill in the album process. Another one opened a pub and is now the manager of a pub. There's more things that happened that I can't even think about off the top of my head. But anyway, so it was very, very intense, basically. all of this stuff was going on. But the album itself is more about it's kind of about freedom, basically. I know that sounds probably really pretentious, but it's about trying to find freedom in this kind of increasingly crazy world that we live in. And when I say freedom, I mean like presence, like trying to be present. I think there's so much stuff that is pulling us away from the present all the time. And especially now with like my kind of theme that I've been obsessed with ever since really we started this band, which is like social media, now AI. There's this sense of just like never really being able to dial into the current moment. And then also this idea that there are just all of these facts of life, like for me, loss, impermanence, change, that make the human experience this very, very heavy thing, at least for me. And all of those things combined make me think about how difficult it is just to feel free, just to feel present. And that's where the kind of title came in of Bird, just of trying to kind of like rise above all of that and to feel a bit lighter, basically. But yeah, all of that stuff was just kind of going on whilst we were making the album, and it was really, really intense, wasn't it?
Yeah,
making this record. I don't know whether that captured it particularly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, as you said, that was more the color of what was going on rather than like the songs being about that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think whereas in the second album, there was a whole, you asked if it was a continuation, there was a whole separate raft of things that were going on in people's lives during the making of the second album. And a lot of it was about that. Whereas these are like new big life events and changes that have gone on. And the music is about what you've said. You know?
Yeah.
It's different. And as you say as well, like it definitely, again, like we were talking about Spit It Out, how things start out and then where they end up. Like there was a sense of this album starting out with a bit more of a kind of very particular future-looking, forward-looking, outward-looking kind of state of the world kind of thing. And then that morphed into something a bit more fundamental and eternal and human. And I think that happens a lot of the time with our music. And I think that hopefully illuminates something about us as a band that like always, it might be about this really particular thing, but really when you kind of drill down into it, it's about something much more, I don't want to say general because it's not general, but just something more human. And, you know, a song might be about AI or something, but actually really it's talking about love or it's talking about connection or
like with Follow Your Direction, that one of the songs that's out from the album, that was inspired by this conversation between a Google software engineer and the chatbot that they were developing at the time called Lambda. And you can read the transcript online. The Google engineer became convinced that the chatbot he was working on had become sentient. And he proved it. He tried to prove it.
Yeah.
And like recorded all of these conversations. And then he published the transcript and he sent it in the email to all of the Google employees saying like Lambda is sentient. And if you read and he then got fired, and then everyone was like, you're full of shit. But the interesting thing about it is reading the transcript. It at times you don't know which one is the chatbot and which one is the human, and the kind of questions that the guy asks the chatbot and the answers that it solicits in turn are these just like, they're these very human, as Jamie was saying, these very human preoccupations. Like, do you feel lonely? What are you afraid of? And like, there was something about that, as Jamie says, that there's this very kind of common thread, even in this very futuristic technological world that we're like just running into like blindly and head first all the time. It's very futuristic, but it's also still fundamentally preoccupied with the same concerns about loneliness, about death, about life, about love. That all of these things are still like there all the time, but you know, they're just being reframed in a way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
it's like that. Was it that couples therapist who has that amazing show on BBC iPlayer called Couples Therapy? And she said a great thing is like every couple only ever has 3 fights. As in every argument, every fight is really about 3 things. And there's a similar thing of like a song or a movie or a documentary or whatever could appear to be about something very new or very particular, but like ultimately it will probably, the reason it's interesting will boil down to something that, you know, that's ancient, that could be, you know, what a play from the 1600s is getting at, you know. It's, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm so interested in all of these subjects lyrically, is because they carry all of these very like human instincts and emotions and feelings and preoccupations, but they are also very alien. You know, like artificial intelligence is still incredibly alien to us. What it is literally this sort of, it feels like an alien that's landed on Earth that everyone's trying to make sense of. So yeah, that all of that kind of is a sort of thread that runs through the record. And yeah, but it also was yeah, it was 2 years of just like lots of shit going on in everyone's lives, and I think albums can be really beautiful in that way. They can bear witness to the experience of the people in the project, and they can endure that, and they can kind of, yeah, they're sort of, and they keep getting shaped, maybe subconsciously, by all of those things that are happening. Maybe that means sometimes that it's still not done, you know, and there were times when maybe we thought, oh, this album is almost finished, and then it just keeps dragging you by
You're not done yet.
It's like, you guys aren't finished. We've another 2 months, another 3 months, and you're like, really? I can't believe that this is still going. But yeah, it went on for a while.
No, I mean, I love that concept of like, yeah, navigating those events in the background, but then turning that into navigating these emotions in this very digital, as you say, world where we're increasingly becoming disconnected from those emotions, you know, through the world that's happening. No, I love that. And I love I'm guessing the idea of bird being the title as well. You said it was about freedom. I'm guessing that's where the title came from.
Exactly. Yeah, it had another title at the beginning, which was the title of the last track on the album, which was "Stop the Morning Traffic." That was the working title, but it felt, again, like we lived with that for quite a long time, like maybe a year or something. Everyone was like, "Oh yeah, that's the title of the album." But then as it progressed, and also as songs, as like 20, 30 tracks got whittled down to 10, it just increasingly felt like not the right title. And Bird, it felt more striking to me, and it felt more also like, it felt more evocative of like this idea of trying to shed some of that heaviness of being, of that heaviness of like human existence that we're pouring into all of these kind of technological things all the time, and that feel just like, yeah, very very sort of like, what do I want to say, like very kind of just integral to the human experience. And yeah,
almost feeling like a bird caged in.
Yeah, exactly.
It. Yeah.
Exactly. Totally. Exactly. And exactly, it has that kind of, it has both sides of the image, I think. So yeah, I'm really happy with the title of this album, actually.
Yeah, also,
I think it's my favorite title.
No, so next question then. I know you worked with one of your heroes in the making of this record, Chris Taylor of Brooklyn indie rock outfit Grizzly Bear. Was looking to see them at one point at Glastonbury way back when. There was some interesting characters in the audience watching them as well. But yeah, I just wanted to know what it was like having him there to guide you through the making of this record and what he brought to the table.
Yeah, I mean, it was really, really unbelievable. I remember, when was it? About August 2023, and we were like driving across Europe back from a show, and just listening to a lot of, you know, Grizzly Bear's music, and we were thinking about what producer we should approach to do this record, and we also listened to Chris's amazing solo album as Can't, which is just incredible and very different to Grizzly Bear, more electronic, and I'd say sort of more experimental in a studio way. And we thought, you know, fuck it, like, why don't we approach him? And we Carlos managed to find a way to get in touch, and he was just like really effusive and amazing. And anyway, fast forward to last year, we worked with him and made the record. And yeah, it was really incredible. Like he's like a really unique spirit, like outside of making music. I can't say I've met many people like him. He's got so many ideas. He's so loving. He's so nurturing, not just of the songs, but of the band and the people making it. Like it's quite a thing I've never done anything like that, to sort of get on board with a band, with a group of people who've known each other their whole lives, who have a shorthand, who make music together, and someone to sort of not just come into that, but come kind of over on top of that, and, you know, to guide it and to lead it and to produce it. And that's quite an amazing skill. And again, going back to the thing, it's, you know, it's not particular to the job. That's like a human skill. So yeah, he was really, really, really extraordinary. And I think like really benefited the music. We've like, you know, we've produced ourselves on like the first 2 records, and a lot of the, you know, for the most part, we've produced ourselves, and we've in the past worked with people on a sort of engineering capacity, sometimes, you know, maybe on a production capacity. And this was just everything we were always looking for someone who understood what a band was, not a solo artist, which is like a whole different thing, that relationship with a producer. And yeah, it was just amazing. And Carlos and I got to spend a week with him in his studio in Barcelona, which was amazing, like an amazing experience to see how he works. And he's just got an incredible approach to sound and recording and stuff, and we definitely learned.
He's got like a lot of knowledge about he's got a lot of knowledge about just like recording and how to just like capture sound, especially, I mean, with everything, but especially with guitars. And that goes back to, we were talking about Spit It Out. Like, we've never had so much fun recording guitars before. In fact, I've always kind of found recording guitars just really difficult. And he had such amazing knowledge of amps and how to get certain tones. And he brought this like, he has a lot of like modular equipment, and he'd brought from his place to the studio like a kind of like a suitcase, a little carry-on suitcase of modular gear that he'd like built. And so all of our guitars were like constantly running through all of these like brilliant little like units that could like filter things, add tape delays, add distortion, add all sorts of like great sounds. You just kind of always just in what he called the tone zone, just like carving out tones with this modular stuff. And it was really, it was just really, really fun. It was really, really fun to kind of just, get stuck in with all of these. And also, there's no better feeling than having like a song and just being in a studio and just getting stuck in with it. And Chris is the perfect companion for that, because he's like, oh yeah, what do you want to do? You want to try this? You want to do this? Should we get this amp going? And just like, it was really energized.
So often in these like technical parts of music, whether it's like live sound or studio production or engineers, it seems there's so often a trade-off between like heart and skill. People are either like really skilled and really techie, but like quite heartless, or like don't really connect to the music emotionally, or it's all emotion and all heart, but you know, there's less of the skill or the knowledge. And amazingly, he really had both. He was like such a nerd about Mike's modular gear and stuff, but also just like was always guided by the emotion of the song and what it needed. And so it was incredible. It was a bucket list for us, for sure.
Oh, sounds like it. What an experience. And takes me on to my next one. So like, talking of influences too, obviously Grizzly Bear sounds like an important one for you guys. I know we've discussed Carlos as well, Wild Beast previously, and how much they inspired you as well. Curious with how diverse your sound is, and you know, who some of your other big inspirations are. And was there like a particular moment or a show where you thought, you know, that's it, I'm going to be a musician?
I think like, I mean, you know, It used to be the case that people said, "Oh, everyone says Radiohead," but I don't know how many people do anymore. I don't really know. But Radiohead are, you know, have been always been just such an important band for us, and not just them, but also like all the projects that they're involved in as well. The film scores of Johnny Greenwood or Tom York's solo stuff or Adams for Peace, and we were at a show at Victoria Park.
In Rainbow's tour.
We just done our GCSEs.
Yeah.
We just finished our GCSEs and we went to Victoria Park in London to watch them on the In Rainbows tour. And we got there at like 8 a.m. or something. And we weren't even the first people there. There were people. There were people who'd camped overnight who were from America, from South America, from all over the world, following them on tour. We were probably like 15th in the queue or something. And then but we got right on the barrier when we got in and watched that show. And I think we were just left and were like, Jesus Christ, we got to, either we should just quit now or we need to like get our shit together and make that and make this band as fucking good as it can be. So they were really important. But there's who else would you say, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, like Grizzly Bear, that was definitely like important, like for us growing up, and Radiohead, and then like I mean, there's lots of kind of smaller things that come and go, like Big Thief, I'd say, and so why am I drawing a blank on her name? The singer from Big Thief solo stuff. Adrian Lang.
I think there's more like there's also certainly all of the incredible atmospheres that Jamie creates in the music, all of the textual stuff that is so like, basically the way that a Low Island song usually comes together is that like I will write a little sketch of something, which is, usually some chords, a vocal, and maybe like a tiny bit of, like a drum loop or like some sort of sense of travel, but like not much more than that. And then Jamie will come in and just like, create all of these textures around the song. And a lot of that stuff, which it doesn't necessarily, you wouldn't listen to the music and go, oh, that's where that comes from. But actually, I mean, you'll speak to this more better than me, but like, I think a lot of that stuff comes from your love of electronic music.
Yeah.
And
yeah. That was a big
one of Jamie's favorite artists is Ricardo Villalobos. And you probably don't listen to Low Island and think, oh, they must be influenced by Ricardo Villalobos. But actually,
much as I've tried, I can point to like 3 moments in our whole repertoire. I'm like, there, that's it. That's it.
But the way in which the texts are created, for example, like the kind of the philosophy behind it or the technique behind it is very much from that world. Like this kind of these randomized elements, the way in which like synths shoot off in different directions. I mean, that to me. It's such an important part of the one.
Yeah, no, I think it is also because like way back when Carlos and I were resident house and techno DJs in Leeds. Whilst at the same time, and we weren't just DJing, we were like making and putting out music at the same time as being in a very Grizzly Bear Wild Beast indie. And then both of those things finished, and then we sort of formed Low Island as initially as a way to sort of bring those things together, which is why it's an indie band and it's songs and it's guitars, but also there's this kind of electronic stuff. So that's always been there in the music, even though like a lot of this album is much more band guitars. And then as Carla said, it's like there's less of a dance music electronica coming into it, with the exception of maybe one of the songs that we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But there's definitely that approach to just the approach to production and the atmospheres and stuff. And I think like artists like Ricardo Villalobos is very much known as kind of like Ibiza party club music, but actually like a lot of his records, when you just listen to it outside of that environment, they're very like emotionally multi-layered. They're very lonely sounding. And there's these kind of just strange little events and little sounds make you wonder kind of why is that in there? Why did that happen? And I don't know, I just find, you know, for most people, you listen to it and you're like, it's really long and nothing happens. And that's totally true. But there's also just something in that approach to making music. And yeah, it just has this kind of strange, multi-layered emotional profile to it that I'm really, really I'm not over it. I'm really not.
And it's like that. There's that. So there's that kind of element that is always there, and it kind of, if, you know, the way in which Jamie creates textures and writes, it's so. I think it's so informed by that. But then we still have, like, no matter how hard you try, in our blood, you know, we have like Wild Beasts, Block Party, Warpaint, Radiohead, Foals, all Alt J, all of those kind of like art rock bands that we grew up listening to. Like, that's kind of, it's fucking died. It's just like, it's died in our blood, that stuff.
Yeah.
And then all of the kind of electronic textures, I think, is where, somewhere in there is where like the Low Island sound comes together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And I think that eclectic mix, I mean, you're just rattling off those artists there. It's like, it's all my favorites. That's probably why I like your guys' music so much. It's all that combination. But yeah, I mean, the next track I want to talk about then is This Is Water. Again, one of the ones that you released, just a beautiful song, completely different vibe altogether to spit it out, which again is what I love about your music, that eclecticism. I think on the press release you compared this one to Caribou, which I could definitely hear that particularly coming through in the synth textures on there. It might be Ricardo Villalobos as well, but coming through.
No, I'm so glad you said Caribou, because we didn't mention.
Yeah, we didn't mention
or them rather on the last question, and that's a huge influence. And again, like the early Caribou stuff, not far off from Grizzly Bear. It's really sort of guitar-y and psychedelic. And then the dance music thing came in at like 2010.
Yeah.
You know, it's similar to Fortet, which is like not dance music at all until like 2010. And then, so yeah.
No, I love that. So it was just really, you know, tell us the story behind that song, really, and how that one came together.
So lyrically, that was inspired. It's named after this speech by the American writer David Foster Wallace, and he gave a speech to some university graduates entitled "This Is Water," and it's basically he talks about how, quote, unimaginably hard it is to remain alive and conscious in the adult world, or something like that, and it really and he tells this wonderful story at the beginning of the speech where he talks about two young fish swimming along in the sea or in the water, and they pass an older fish swimming the other way. And the older fish says to them, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two young fish swim on a bit. And then one of them turns to the other and says, "What the hell is water?" And I thought it was just such a, like, it was a very funny little story, but it's such a nice little
I love that.
Like, we can just so easily miss things that are around us all the time. And they can be good things and they can be bad things. Like, I think technology has become a bit like water for everybody. We stop thinking about it, the fact that it's even there, you know. The same is true also of all of the beauty in the world too. So the song was inspired by this idea, of trying to kind of to notice things, I guess. And how hard that is. And it started off, interestingly, as like a completely, and this is very typical with Low Island songs as well, it started off as a completely different track. It was probably one of the earlier songs on the album.
Yeah, I would say.
And it started off just like as a kind of much more like a Caribou, like fall on the floor dance track.
Like some of our previous tracks, like Don't Let the Lights In or Robin or Everything Before Us, that in that kind of world. And I think some of the synths that you mentioned, the sort of Caribou synth textures, are probably like hangovers from that arrangement. You know, like they're just that have kind of remained.
Yeah, and we played it, actually, that version of the song. We were supporting an American band called Ex Ambassadors, and we played we were like trying out some of the new material, and we played that version of the song a load of times, and it just wasn't quite landing. And also I think we felt like talking about how long albums take, we just didn't feel like the sound of the album we'd quite arrived at it. Like it felt still like very much like our old stuff. And so I can't remember what happened, but
it was the same as it was you.
But you guys, Jamie's family have had this 12-string guitar in the family for ages.
Oh yeah,
in our studio, and I think we were just like we were like, oh, how can we? And I just picked up it. Bear in mind, it was like a full-on dance track, the previous version. It's like, oh, but we can pick up a 12-string. It was like the last thing that you would probably put on a song like that. And I think then suddenly we also got into this groove of playing. We were like, we need this album to be written and recorded live together in the room. And that song was sort of all these loops, and it was producer song, and it was all made in the computer. And we were like, we just need to we really wanted to move beyond that. And so picking up the 12-string, I started playing some of the chords for the track, reworking them. And then the band started coming in, and eventually like the song just kind of came together. And that's how a lot of the songs ended up coming together, to be honest, is like we would just kind of hash stuff out in the room together, which was a way more, I don't know, I think it was a really enjoyable experience for all of us, coming from like having, made stuff on laptops and multi-tracked everything. It was, yeah. So this song was kind of like I think it was kind of the way into the album, actually, this track. It kind of triggered the record in a way.
Yeah, and also not just what it was the way in, but also what it wasn't, as in the fact that we weren't doing that first version.
It was like
that told us something about this record. Do you know what I mean? What got left off was just as illuminating as what got left in. And that was really, that was definitely really.
And you know what? Probably people wish we would release the previous version.
It could be on the deluxe version.
Yeah, maybe we will. Yeah. 19 people out of 20 would have preferred.
Yeah. Everyone. Why didn't you release the previous?
Yeah,
it's
got a banging kick drum all the way.
Yeah, it's got a foot on the floor. It sounds great.
It was in 10 though, or something. It was on some spooky time signature. With a little saucy, but club track in 10.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I love that. And I love how it like almost like the way that you made that song almost matches like the story that you told about, moving past the distractions, and then you find that 12-string guitar, and it's like,
oh yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. But yeah, that's I mean, that is one as well. That is one. It's hard to kind of like, distill all the ideas that go into an album, but there's something about playing music together live in a room that is exactly the kind of thing that the album is trying to get at. Playing music in a room live with your friends is like absolutely a form of presence and a form of freedom, I think. And noticing things, you do notice stuff all the time. You notice there's a 12-string on the right over there, and you're going to pick it up and use it. And yeah, there's something about the process which mirrors what the album's about for sure.
Yeah, and it sounds corny, but like it's then not all happening in an app. Do you know what I mean? It's not, and that speaks to the album, the Bird thing as well, like breaking out of the tech, breaking out of platforms and the accounts and the whatever. It's just like it's not happening. It's totally off grid,
Yeah.
And I saw where this album was recorded at. I'm gonna say Le Frette, but is that right? Perfect. Le Frette Studios in France, which I imagine is a big upgrade, from recording the vocals in your bedroom cupboard, which I know you did on that first record.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're 3 albums into your career now. Other than upgrading, the production side, was there anything else that you did differently compared to the previous records? The lessons that you learned maybe before that you carried over?
Definitely. I think Carlos kind of like touched on it a moment ago, in that we really like, I don't want to get too technical, but it sort of really clarifies what was so different about it, because everything we had done in the past, whether we were just making demos at home or we were recording the real thing, was multi-tracking, so it's one musician records and then you edit that, and then another musician records on top of that, so you do the drums first and then the bass, and everyone's kind of one at a time, and it's too many cooks. And we're all sat there around, the bass player recording that part. And, change that. Oh, no, let's play a different note. Or maybe you could play this note at the end of the eighth. All that that happens when every single person is doing it. So it's real kind of oversight committee vibes. And this band can be like terrible for that sometimes. And so we were like, do you know what we need all four of us dogs on a lead. And so we need to all be playing live together at the same time, and not just like when we record it, but when we write it. And so, we just made some tweaks to our studio and got some equipment that would allow us to record absolutely everything in here at the same time, just while we were making demos. And we had that, set that up all the way through the 2 years of writing this record. And it made such a difference, because it also makes a difference to like literally the parts people write and stuff. When someone's got to stand there and play a guitar all the way through a song, rather than just record 5 seconds and just copy and paste that through it. When you've got to sit there and play it, you're going to make, because you're a human being, not just a copied and pasted bit of audio, you're going to make little changes. You're going to, I'm going to stop at this point, or I'm going to change the chord when I sing that note. All of these things that actually make that part more substantial and more worthwhile. And crucially, this is the crucial bit, is you then need less. Do you know what I mean? Like if you've got a drummer, a bassist, a synth, and a guitar, or whatever the collection of things in a song is, but everyone's having to sit there and play it round and round and round again, like in some of those Talking Heads records where it's like sounds like loops, but actually it's people playing and recording it start to finish. It's going to make each of those individual parts relate to the song more detailed, more nuanced, and that means that you need to add less stuff. Because often you need to add stuff when everything just sounds a bit dead, and you're like, it's not enough, because you're just dealing with copied and pasted loops and stuff. So I think that is like a big thing about.
And also, I think the other thing that one of my favorite things about this album is that it has, from my perspective at least, it has the most of the 4 personalities on the album in ways that the previous records haven't, because of multi-tracking. Because when you're playing together, you're less self-conscious, I think, and you start expressing yourself more, because you haven't got 3-4 people kind of staring at you whilst you're trying to write your part. And actually what it means is that everyone gets to express themselves more, and you can really, for me, and this is going back to those bands we were talking about, Rock Party, Wild Beasts, Radiohead, Warpaint, Alt J, whatever. The reason I fell in love with those bands was because I fell in love with the band. I knew what Matt Tong's drumming sounded like, and Russell Isak's guitar, and I could hear all of that coming through in the music.
Yeah, it's like characters in a sitcom.
Exactly. And and this album, I think we were much better at allowing everyone's personalities to come through. And like I think Jacob's bass playing on this album is incredible. Like it's so melodic, but also groovy, and that's so him. And I think like just being able to kind of like let people really like lean into their kind of musical self-expression is one of my favorite things about this album, and was very different to before.
Yeah, and also like what you're saying about the bass playing as one example, it's like that. I would argue that couldn't happen if you just kept doing it the other way. If you're like, we're just going to punch in on this little drum loop going round and round. And, again, like one of our songs, Don't Let the Light In, that is just like a short little bass loop, just plowing all the way through the song. it's a verse, it's a chorus, it doesn't matter. Just it's going on maybe. And working this way, suddenly like loads of songs on the record, the bass guitar line sounds like someone's like singing their own tune, their own other little counter melody or something. And it's just like, everything's just kind of working in lines all the way through the songs with like light and shade and stuff. And I don't know, it's just for us, we really needed to do that, and it made a big difference to work all standing up and playing at the same time, and that was very different to how we used to do it.
Yeah, no, I love that, and definitely hear the difference coming through in those singles that we've heard so far as well. Like and again, going back to the, like you say, with the concept of the album, like just the human connection and bringing people back together. I love that aspect of it as well. One thing that I definitely want to talk about is obviously the DIY nature of your music as well. So, for those that might not be aware, the writing, the recording, the release, the distribution on your own label, the promotion for the record, you are one of these bands that is like really kind of independent in every sense. And, we hear from musicians all the time how hard it is to keep going with, rising costs, the revenues from streaming platforms. I just want to know from your side, like firsthand, what is the career of like a DIY artist like in 2025? What are like the pros and cons, would you say?
It's a nightmare. The money is dried up. Like there's no funding really left anymore. People are it's so hard to find money for projects. And increasingly it's really hard because I don't want to be down. I don't want to sound down about it all the time, but it's really hard not to be down about it because all the conversations I have, I'm the manager of the band. And then like the way we kind of divide up the tasks is I sort of am like the manager. Jamie deals with like all of the live show stuff, which is pretty intense. Felix does a lot of the kind of like what I guess the label would do. And then Jacob is the tour manager. So that's how we divide everything up. And a lot of the conversations I have at the moment are just really hard because there's so little money going around. And I think there are so many reasons for that. Some are to do with some are to do with streaming, some are to do with social media, some are to do with just the fact that in the current economic climate, people just have less money at the moment. Some things to do with Brexit, there are so many things that go into the reason that the music industry is squeezed right now. But also just like, I think we're in a bit of an adjustment phase where like, that there used to be these things that really kind of like shifted the needle maybe for your career that could have been in relation to radio or press. And now when I was speaking to record labels about this album, most of them said they didn't care about the music and they were just interested in the social media stats basically, or whether the band had any catalog. I mean, one guy literally said to me, "To be honest, mate, I don't care about the music." That was genuinely what someone said to me. Another manager that we spoke to said to me this thing which I'll never forget. Said, "Good music doesn't matter anymore." So like there is this quite sort of dismal. Like,
what's really wild is
at the moment, to be honest,
all of those people on the industry side are just there ultimately as middle people between music fans and artists.
Yeah.
And no fan you could talk to would say, "I don't care about the music." And no artist would say that.
Yeah.
So why have the middle people hijacked it to a point where they're saying, "Yeah, we don't care about the music"? It was like, well, you should, because the people you serve on both sides, the listeners and the makers, do care about it. So
and I think we're just in a really tough time where the worth of people's work is just become completely about data, basically, and that's how people are making decisions, and it just means that like lots of great stuff isn't getting supported because like I know it sounds like such a cliche, but like billions of streams, billions of social media followers is not the only marker of success. Like great records are great records, and they don't necessarily always sell or stream or, you know, millions and millions and millions. And that music is still worth making and worth promoting. And we have to find a way around that. So going back to the question about like, what's it like to be DIY artists? I think this is, in our time, is the hardest it has ever been, for sure. But in a way that kind of makes me feel even more kind of resolved to keep going, because I think it's so important that like people keep finding a way to make music and putting out music that they believe in and that they think is going to mean something to them and to the world. Because increasingly labels are just not, labels and publishers are not particularly interested in supporting lots of music, and it is just really, really hard. And also you have to wear a lot of hats. Like you have to be everything now when you're an artist, and that's really, really hard. You know, everyone in this band works at least one other job. Some people work 2 other jobs. Some people work three jobs, and like, you know, you have to try and balance that with your relationship with, you know, with your friends, with your friendship, with paying the rent, with showing up for the shows, because you're not going to get paid to play the shows, you know? So like, yeah, it's really, really tough. But when a show is great and when you get into the studio or when you write a great song, like, I know it sounds a cliche, but it is worth it. But to keep going and to keep your spirit up and to keep having that fire in your belly of wanting to do it is incredibly difficult at the moment. And I feel worried about the music industry at the moment, and especially how artists who are on the, you know, on the lower end of the income spectrum, like how you do this is a huge question mark to me. It's really, really, really difficult right now, for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's crazy. Some of this stuff that you mentioned there, like with regards to what the labels were coming out with. I mean, I've kind of always had it in my head that, you know, with the streaming system, you know, it may work for like those 5% of artists, which are like the top 5% of artists. But if it doesn't work for everyone else, the other, you know, 95%, you know, why continue with that model? And I kind of almost think it's going to take like, you know, you've kind of seen it now with the venues where finally, like the stadium tours, they're going to start giving back to the smaller venues and stuff like that. And it's almost like, you know, is it going to take like a Chris Martin or one of the bigger artists to just say, look, this doesn't work anymore. Let's come up with something else.
Yeah, I think something has to change. Otherwise, there is just going to be a drain of people, because it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work right now. The current system, like you have to be to make a living from music is just basically impossible. You know, and we've got friends who are like touring you know, doing way more tickets and like much more kind of like, I don't know what the right expression is, you know, well, successful than us, who are not able to make a living from this. So I think there has, as you say, something has to change. And the fear is that you just lose a lot of great music, great artists, and great communities. Because it shouldn't just be about fucking roaring success and fucking millions of streams and billions of social media followers. There's something, grassroots music depends on it being fucking grassroots. Do you know what I mean? Like, it depends on artists not being successful and in a
you have no
sense.
underground.
Yeah, otherwise there's no underground. I think that's the real risk at the moment. So like, but that's why it's important to try and keep going if you can. But yeah, it's not easy.
Absolutely. And, you know, from a fan perspective as well, like, you know, what are the best things that music fans can do in 2025 to support? Is it, you know, buy merchandise, buy tour tickets? Is it downloading the app? So if you stream an album but you really like it, is it then going on to say Bandcamp or the band website and just paying that extra £5, almost like a tip or whatever?
It's
Or the combination of everything, I guess.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's hard. I think actually increasingly, I saw one of an artist who we really admire called Art School Girlfriend. She was kind of writing about the state of the industry like the other day on her social media, and she said join the artist mailing list, and I thought that was really good because like it's increasingly like you invest in these social media platforms so much time and effort, and it's crazy how much time and effort you have to put into like all of the different platforms. And increasingly they don't allow you to reach your audience unless you pay for it, and so you've kind of put all this work into these platforms, but you can't get to the people. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Well, the people who already follow you.
Yeah, the people who follow you.
Like crucial.
Follow you. I mean, like,
Yeah.
you know, it's like it's mad, and there's something really great about the fact that the mailing list still exists because you know, like you can reach those people. Like you can put an email in someone's inbox and say, "We have a show. We have a record coming out." So I do think joining artists' mailing lists is a really great thing that fans can do, and it helps them to stay in touch with what an artist is doing. And also the other thing about like that environment, which is, it's very subtle, the difference, but like you're much more likely to read through an email and like check that out. Now, increasingly like TikTok and Instagram, it's like, you're not watching shit for more than like 2 or 3 seconds. Even, you know, it's like, it's just everything is so fleeting. And it's quite hard for artists to like cut through on those platforms, even though they're putting so much work into them. And actually what's nice about the email is that like you do read, you know, like you read them and you might just give them a bit more time.
Also, like a medium dictates a pace. Like you say, when you're just flicking through on Instagram, it's like half a second, half a second, half a second, half a second. Whereas if, for instance, you're someone who like reads the newspaper, that activity dictates a certain pace where you might read a long article or something. In the same way, like getting an email on the mailing list, there's like a different pace of like, okay, I'm doing my emails now. I might read some things, you know.
Yeah, exactly. The culture of it is just a bit slower, and I think that will. And ultimately, as an artist, what you want is for any person who's coming across your music to like give it some time. And I think it's just, and this is no shade on people. I think it's the fault of the platforms. They've created this attention deficit economy where like we just fucking flick through all this stuff so fast, and it's not conducive to like, I don't think to much really, but to certainly not to like supporting artists, and not for artists like promoting their work. So I think the mailing list thing is good, and then of course, you know, buying merch and coming to gigs. I think coming to gigs and buying merch is just, you know, it's so important for artists. Like that is definitely, if as and when we ever make any money, which is rare, it's in that moment of like having a well-attended gig and people buying some merch, and that always is so important. But you know, again, like it's not, we're so aware at the moment that like people, it's the cost of things is so high at the moment, you know. It's like, and everywhere there's so many people who want your money. No, like it's so hard. So it's like it is just really hard. Which is why I think the mailing list is great, because it's like a really casual, but like a bit more. It's outside of this.
And it's free as well.
And
there's no money as well. Yeah, I would say the ultimate thing is like come to a show and buy some merch. That would be the main thing. But also, it's going to sound so redundant, but like I wish I could just say stream the music. Do you know what I mean? Because like you're a fan of the band, the ultimate thing you want to do is listen to their music. You might want a t-shirt, or you might be, you know, like want to take the time aside to go and watch their show, but just like stream it. It's just such a shame that that isn't the best way to support it. Whereas if it was like, I don't know, 30 years ago, you could just say, buy the record. That's a great support the artist. And I feel like that's the fundamental thing a fan wants to do above and beyond buying a t-shirt or coming to a show is different. You also want to come to a show, but I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take to get to the point where I could answer this question with music. Do you know what I mean? Like, that'd be the best.
Yeah, well, we brainstormed some ideas there, so hopefully, in a few years we can maybe circle back and see what's been done. But yeah, speaking of touring, then obviously you have a couple of tours coming up. You got the 5 in the round shows to launch the record. Before that, the big UK EU tour at the end of the year. Buzzing to see you're finally coming back to Nottingham and playing one of my favourite venues too. I can't wait for that. What are you most excited about for this upcoming tour? And sort of some bands, they're more at home in the studio, they're more comfortable out performing live. Which side of the fence do you guys sit on?
I think for the tour, we are really excited just to play this album live, which maybe sounds obvious, but we, like we were saying, we wrote and recorded this album live. So it's for us to be able to actually then go out and play it is really exciting. And also the album launch shows in the round, we've recorded loads of videos like that. We haven't really done one. We did one trial show like that. So I think to play like that is really, really fun. You have the audience right there, kind of right by you and by all the equipment. And that's not that kind of front on performer stage divide thing. And also it just kind of opens up a bit more from the performance just dynamic of the band. We're actually looking at each other. It's a really, really fun format. So I'm really excited by that. What about you, Jamie?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited for performing in the round. That was like a really exciting thing, because we just thought that's only going to work for videos. How is that going to work at a show? Because you've got to have the audience somewhere. And so we tried that out in London last year, as you say, and it was really, really exciting. Even though we had the sound system booming at us from all angles, which was but actually that was quite fun. That made it, made it feel, I don't know, you felt like you were also in the audience. Do you know what I mean? Which actually you don't normally get that feeling when you're performing on stage. It's like they get the lovely sound system and you've got your monitoring or whatever system you've got going on. So it's fun in the round where you kind of feel in and amongst it with the audience.
And then the studio live thing, I think I think about that all the time. I don't know if I think my favorite thing, I think I feel most at home in the studio, but under quite narrow conditions. When there's a good song and you're in the studio and everything's flowing. I think that's when I'm most at home. I just love it's such a buzz. It never gets old when you've found a good song and
eureka moment.
Yeah, you everything you do just seems to be making it better. Or you can't. Yeah, and everyone's playing and coming up with ideas, and there's just a.
Also,
I love that.
The song is like a young person at that stage. When you're in the studio, it's full of hope and possibility. You're there in the studio making it, and you're thinking this will be so sick at a show, and this will be so fantastic. Or I've got a great idea for the video for it. But the song itself is this young person at the start of its life, and it's all full of possibility. It might sort of. The mix might not sound good, but it doesn't matter about that. You're mixing it later. That's in 3 months' time. Do you know what I mean? There's this one. Yeah. There's a wonderful youth to the artwork, when you're in the studio. Whereas when you're performing live, that's fantastic for all sorts of other reasons, because it's that direct connection with the audience and stuff. But the song is a little bit older at that point. It can't really change so much because you've already made it and you've mixed it and you've released it. And so the song's a little bit older, but then there's this whole other wonderful thing of the rawness of performing live and that connection with the audience.
Yeah, and also increasingly when you're a freelancer, self-employed person, like there's not much structure to your life a lot of the time. But like when you go, what's so nice about touring is that it creates a structure for you, and there's something really comforting about. Yeah, we were touring with this band, the Boxer Rebellion, recently, and it was just like,
Oh, great band.
and they were touring in the Netherlands, and every show was only like an hour away from the previous show, and the rhythm was so nice because we just like, yeah, you get up, have your breakfast, drive a little bit, get somewhere else, have your lunch, do sound check, have a little break, have dinner, go on stage, pack down, go to the hotel, and do it again. And it was so life in when you're touring is just really simple in ways that like it isn't so much when you're not. I am also quite at home then because it's just like suddenly things are just pretty straightforward actually. You know?
And you also like, I don't know, maybe I'm outing myself here, but like you go quite easy on yourself in the day because the premise is like, well, my work is in the evening. The work is a dream as well because you're playing a show and that's fantastic. You have that sense and you wake up like, sit down, have some quiet time now, even though it's like 1 PM. It's like, well, the work's in the evening. It's like, it's a nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Perfect. So we've come to the end almost. I just want to finish off by talking about your latest single. You just released it, Machine Lover. I think if Spit It Out was in Rainbows, this one definitely feels a bit more Kid A or Amnesiac, that kind of vibe. Obviously got those electronic elements coming in. Bit of hot chip I got in there too as well at certain points. But obviously you had that amazing, shadow puppetry video that you just released as well. Tell us a bit about, the video and the track and how it all came together.
The video was, we switched this single out a bit last minute and we needed to come up with a visual for it. And I was trying to come up with some ideas, and me and my girlfriend, who's an artist, we stumbled across this like video we stumbled across loads of videos of like mechanical birds made out of just like, cardboard or paper or just, stuff that you find around the house. And we were like, we could make one of those. And originally the plan was that I would wear it as a hat, and like kind of sing the song and turn the bird. And it would almost be like I was a kind of jukebox with a bird, but that was proved to be very complicated. Turned out that having a flat surface for the bird to be on was absolutely vital. So we spent a good 3 days just like fiddling around with cardboard, kebab sticks, a glue gun, and that was it. And we put together this mechanical bird. And then we found a really lovely collaborator in a guy called Brian Rankin, who's mainly photographer for fashion, but he's filmed he took all the press photos for the band, but also filmed a lot of the music videos. The song itself, I guess, is just kind of, it's about how I read this amazing book called To Be a Machine by a guy called Mark O'Connell. And it's all about this movement called transhumanism, which is how a bunch of people, like a lot of them from Silicon Valley, like, one of the most famous is this guy, Ray Kurzweil, who used to work at Google. It's all about kind of like augmenting and enhancing the human body and mind through technology, to kind of like, escape our limitations. And they all believe in like singularity and crazy things like that. Ultimately, it's about a very human thing, which is like humans are not enough. They as they come and as they are, they're not enough, and they need more. We need more. We need to be augmented. We need to be enhanced. And the whole song is this kind of exploring this idea. How can it be that we're not enough? It all kind of came together like that. And the mechanical bird came from that, was kind of inspired by that book, To Be a Machine. And above anything else, it was just a lot of mostly it was a lot of fun to make. There was one moment where I did want to stamp on it and just break it because it wasn't working properly.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah,
And with the song as well, like is it particularly about, relationship with social media? Because I mean, reading through the lyrics, that was almost like what came across. I mean, I'm not sure if you've heard the song by the 1975, "The Man Who Married the Robot." And
yeah, I don't know that one,
kind of,
but yeah.
it was kind of like it was almost like that vibe that was coming through. Was that kind of in your mind, that relationship with social media?
Yeah, it was more actually relationships that I was reading about, partly in this book, but partly outside of that, where people have started forging like relationships with their AI chatbots.
Sometimes in like a physical format.
Sometimes in like a physical format. Sometimes they're falling in love with a chatbot. Sometimes they're making friends with them. And I'm just I found that really fascinating.
In a scary way.
Yeah, in a scary way, but also in a sad way, and also just a really like curious way. That like, some of the things that people would say when they had these relationships was like, oh, this thing is really dependable. It's not going to let me down. It's not going to leave me.
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of identifying these fundamental risks and things about human connection, and people are saying, yeah, what if we could get rid of that?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
Like, okay.
And then this thing is just, it's never, yeah, there was one guy who was like, yeah, it's never going to let me down. And yeah, there's so much in that for me. It's so deeply sad. It's quite frightening. And at times it's quite, it can be quite moving as well, that someone has been able to find companionship in a machine. It's just really, yeah, it's just something, there's so much in it for me that's very beguiling and makes for great fodder for writing music.
There's definitely like, sorry, I'm going to sound like a fan talking about our own video. I feel like I'm allowed to be a fan of it. No, but like there's something really perfectly sums up what the song's about in like there's the kind of one of the recurring shots in the video is like Carlos is winding up the bird and staring kind of dreamily at the bird in motion as if it was a real bird. And there's that kind of sense of like, well, that you're mechanically making this thing work, i.e. the AI relationship, but you kind of forget, like earlier in this interview when Carlos said we sort of talk about AI like it's a new alien on Earth, we sort of forget that we're the ones making it. We're the ones turning the hand and programming it, but you get kind of hypnotized by the thing at the other end of it or the shadow of it on the wall, and you sort of start seeing it like a real lover, or in this case, a real bird or whatever, and you kind of forget that you're the one working it and bringing it into being.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I thought that was awesome in the video. OJ.
I agree.
Really compelling.
Great, good. That was yeah.
As a fan of that video.
They're fantastic stuff. Well, before we get into that song then, I just want to thank you guys for taking the time out, having a chat. Absolutely really enjoyed diving into the ins and outs of Bird. Once again, for listeners, viewers, the album comes out 29th of May. You can catch them on tour in the round and later on in the year as well. All I want to say is, there it is. But go buy the vinyl as well. Lovely red vinyl. Go check it out. But yeah, best of luck with the release. And yeah, can't wait to hear it live at the Bodega in October.
Thanks so much for having us, man. We really, really enjoyed it.